Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us for this explainer. Okay, let's dive into this because today we are completely flipping the script on basically everything popular culture has taught us about romance, dating, and attraction. We're going to look at the raw psychology behind why chasing someone is actually one of the most destructive things you can do for your own self-worth, and how literally abandoning that chase is the ultimate sign of psychological maturity.
So, why does trying harder actually push them away? I mean, we've all seen that classic rom-com trope, right? You know the one. The hero is sprinting through an airport terminal, risking life, limb, and a full-on tackle by TSA just to declare their undying love to someone who rejected them like an hour ago. We've been practically brainwashed to view this relentless pursuit as the absolute pinnacle of romantic devotion. But clinical reality tells a completely different story. When you over-pursue someone, you aren't actually proving your love. Psychologically speaking, you're just pushing them further away. And that brings us to the big flip for today. Culture tells us that chasing equals devotion, but psychology reveals that chasing is actually a massive red flag. Seriously, it's a huge indicator of a lack of internal standards and a real deficit in self-esteem. When someone suddenly stops chasing, it isn't because they're just feeling shy or terrified of rejection. No, it's a highly conscious choice. Their priorities have completely shifted. Let's break down exactly how this happens.
Which brings us to Section 1, the illusion of the chase and changing standards. See, when someone stops chasing, what you're actually witnessing is a fundamental evolution in how they approach relationships. It's a highly conscious choice driven by shifting standards. They've realized that the whole thrill of the chase is mostly just an illusion. It's a game, and it totally distracts from what actually matters in a healthy, sustainable connection. They aren't backing off because they're scared. They're stepping back because their baseline requirements for a partner have seriously leveled up. Moving on to Section 2, the one-sided effort trap, and why we need to value mutual effort. Here's the thing, chasing inherently violates the absolute core foundation of a healthy relationship. Psychology clearly shows us that healthy dynamics are built on both people investing in the connection. I mean, if you're spending weeks trying to convince someone to like you, playing this exhausting, convincing game, you've fallen right into a one-sided trap. You're just burning your energy on someone who doesn't genuinely want to be an active part of your life, instead of holding out for real mutual effort. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that single number, 0. Because 0 is exactly how much time psychologically healthy, highly selective people spend trying to force a connection, period. They fiercely protect their time. If that interest isn't mutual right off the bat, they are not going to engage in some marathon of persuasion. They just move on. Because 0 time spent on the wrong person means you're preserving all your energy for the right one.
All right, Section 3, outsourcing your self-worth versus internal confidence. So the act of chasing actually masks a much deeper issue. People who chase tend to measure their own value by how much attention they're getting. They're relying heavily on external validation. If the person they're pursuing shows interest, boom, their self-worth spikes. But if that person pulls away, their self-worth totally plummets. They are essentially outsourcing their self-esteem to a third party. On the flip side, stable, internally confident people absolutely do not let someone else's level of interest define their worth. Their confidence comes from the inside, completely insulated from the unpredictable, exhausting game of chasing. Next up is Section 4, ignoring actions for words and the importance of observing reality. When you're all caught up in the chase, it's so easy to become blinded by what you want to happen, rather than what is actually happening. Chasers are incredibly vulnerable to empty promises. They just hear what they want to hear. But people with clear standards, words and promises simply do not impress them. They are looking strictly for consistency. They're paying attention to the actual effort, the reliability, and the respect that's being shown in real time. Consider this absolute psychological bedrock for a second. Past behavior is often one of the strongest predictors of future behavior. People who refuse to chase operate entirely on this clinical reality. They would so much rather observe reality than assume potential. They aren't projecting some rom-com fantasy onto a person, they are watching their actions. If past behavior shows flakiness or just a lack of interest, they believe it. They absolutely refuse to chase a fantasy that completely contradicts the hard data right in front of them. Let's look at Section 5, the fear of being alone and seeking reciprocity. So the crucial point is that the absolute lifeblood of any healthy dynamic is reciprocity, meaning both people equally invest in the connection. But the chaser, they completely sacrifice this. And why?
because the fear of being alone is just so overpowering. It acts as this massive defense mechanism, making them willing to settle for a relationship that is totally devoid of mutual investment. They're literally trading real reciprocity for the mere illusion of company. And what's the ultimate consequence of all that fear? Wasting years in the completely wrong relationship. Here is the stark difference, guys. People who are psychologically comfortable being alone do not fear being single. What they fear is squandering their precious time in a dynamic that just isn't healthy. Because they don't fear solitude, they're significantly less likely to settle for connections that fail to meet their core values. The chaser, on the other hand, in their desperate attempt to avoid being alone, risks wasting years on a total dead-end street.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, the power of walking away and self-respect. And this brilliantly illustrates how those who refuse to chase actually embody a very specific set of traits: self-respect, patience, clear standards, and a strict desire for equal effort. Not chasing isn't about, playing hard to get, and it definitely doesn't mean you lack interest. It's actually a profound outward display of personal value. When you embody these 4 traits, you naturally cultivate a super healthy, non-chasing mindset that just repels toxic dynamics. Ultimately, the healthiest choice you can possibly make is knowing when not to chase at all. Sometimes, the strongest, most psychologically sound decision isn't figuring out how to chase someone harder or agonizing over the perfect text to win them over. No way. The strongest decision is simply having the self-respect and the high standard to just walk away. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really reflect on regarding your own relational standards. Which of these traits do you think is the most important in a healthy relationship? Is it the self-respect to walk away, the patience to wait for mutual effort, or having those clear, unwavering standards? Really think about it and try to apply it to how you view your own connections moving forward. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this completely flipped your perspective on the psychology of attraction, and I'll catch you in the next one.